feel so much gratitude in the fact that the people are starting to live into their authentic selves, which because the construct is so tight.
Today I have a very near dear friend to me, Mr. Jude Hickey. I've known Jude for the past probably 3 or 4 years now, I'd say. And I got to know Jude at the Austin Town Lake YMCA. And I was blessed to be able to work alongside of him for these past 3 or 4 years. And I was just telling him, and one of the biggest reasons I wanted to have Jude on the podcast, not only because you could go a lifetime and probably never come in contact with somebody that exudes more love and acceptance and just good energy. If you have found someone like that in your life or in your world, you are truly blessed. But I've never had a conversation with this man that I didn't walk away feeling better. And especially with the time that we're in, and so much, what's the right word? Turmoil.
Divisiveness.
That's the word I was thinking of, but I didn't know if I was going to say it right. Divisiveness? Is that how I say it?
Divisiveness, yeah.
Divisiveness?
Yeah.
Jude is somebody that I could always go to, always ask questions, and I just knew it would be powerful if I was able to get you here in the studio. So without further ado, my very good friend, Jude Hickey. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. I'm so good.
Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you.
Yes.
So do you just want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing and stuff about you personally?
Yeah. So, I grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska. You knew that, right?
I did know that.
Yes, you know my sister.
Yep.
Grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska. I grew up in a tiny little town. Well, I grew up in a tiny town in the center of Nebraska called Cozad, for John J. Cozad, the guy who founded it. And grew up in a small town. It was almost what felt like all white straight people. And growing up,
kind of hate those white straight people.
Me too.
Except me too.
Off to a start already.
This is what it's about.
No, it's a little tiny town, and it was my mom, who moved to that tiny town from Mexico City when she was 8 years old, didn't speak any English at all, and so they were the first real brown family in that town, and they were punished for it. And so by the time I was growing up there, and let me just say this, my mom knew when I was in the womb. She was like, this is a weird kid. I can feel it. This is a really weird kid. And of course, I came out super queer. But like, I always lived my queer self in this tiny little town that already hated us because we were brown. And then they hated me because I was queer as well. But I came out in the 4th grade in this tiny little town. I didn't know that I shouldn't, that it was wrong. But Nebraska, yeah. And then I found myself in theater. I went to the University of Nebraska for performance, and I acted on the stage. But I found my first YMCA when I was 19 years old. I was in a really difficult place in my life where I didn't love myself at all. And people kept reinforcing that for me, why I shouldn't love myself. And so I auditioned for a bunch of shows. The directors were like, Jude, you're very talented, but you don't look like the other boys. And I didn't want to look like the other boys, but I didn't know what that meant. And what it really meant was to have a masculine body, to like lift weights and be super fit. And so they kept telling me to go to the university gym, and I just wouldn't go. But I'd cry about it. I was so ashamed of myself. And then one day my friend said, go to the YMCA. And I was like, oh no, the YMCA is for like young white Christian people. And I don't fit that bill. I'm a rebel. But I went to the YMCA finally, and I walked in, and I tell you what, there's nothing like walking into a space where you see all these differences being celebrated. I saw people who were amputees, people with Down syndrome. I saw young, old, brown, black, white, Asian. I saw moms, and I saw kids, and it was just this coming together of all these people in one space and being celebrated for their differences, not despite their differences, right? So that was kind of my calling to the YMCA, and I ended up being a contract actor for a little while, and then
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did film, I did
Really?
stage. I acted with Broadway actors. It was so much fun. But my husband called me and he said he was in Texas. He was at UT doing his master's program, and he said,
You already married?
We weren't married yet.
Okay.
But he said, please come down to Texas. And I said, okay, you have 1 year. I'll come for 1 year. And then we're going to New York City. And that 1 year turned into 21 years where I found the YMCA again.
Right.
Actually, my second day in Austin, Texas, I walked into the YMCA Town Lake and I asked for a job. And they said no.
Did they really?
They did.
Really?
I showed up in flip-flops and a t-shirt because I thought, like, this is Austin, right? Austin's weird.
Yeah.
No, they didn't like it. And so, but they called me a month later. They hired me, and I folded towels at the towel desk. And I kept performing and folding towels. And it just, I mean, for me, the YMCA is a place, like I said, where everyone comes together and all these differences. I've just met so many people from so many backgrounds. It's like, it's a living lab, right? To learn about how to navigate the human experience. And I do owe so much to that work all these years for making me a better person.
Yeah.
So,
dude, hands down. And anybody that hasn't been to a YMCA, like, I had never really been in the YMCA until, till I ended up in Austin and started working with people in recovery. And, you guys blessed us with the opportunity to be able to train people there. And I can't tell you how many people are in my network now or friends that I have that the people that have been on this podcast that I've met all at the Y. And it's different from any other gym. But as far as that community goes, it expanded my community exponentially.
you were a perfect fit for the YMCA. We lead with these engagement principles of welcome, connect, support, and invite.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the embodiment of you. Those principles, you do it so well, so beautifully. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
So what was it like being in rural Nebraska?
Mm-hmm.
Rural Nebraska in the 4th grade, and how did you come out?
Oh gosh, this is a great story. So I was in the 4th grade, and Mrs. Linky was my teacher. And Mrs. Linky decided to have a conversation with all of the 4th grade girls and boys one day about let's talk about what it's going to be like someday when you have a spouse.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why are we talking about this? But she said to the girls, girls, what will your husband be like? What will you be like in that marriage? And boys, what will your wife be like? And I was hearing these kids go back and forth about the boys talking about their wives and the girls talking about their husbands. And I was like, this is messed up. This is weird. This it felt unnatural,
Mm-hmm.
And so I raised my hand and I said, Mrs. Linky, I could marry a man or a woman and be happy for the rest of my life. And she said, no, you can't. And I said, yes, I can. She's like, who told you can? I said, nobody. I just feel it. I feel it in my heart. I could do that. And she sent me home.
Really?
She sent me home. And so this is a crazy story. She sent me home, and I had to walk home. I went into my mom. She's like, what are you doing here? I told her the whole story. And she marched back down to the school with me, and she said, Mrs. Linky, he can marry whoever he wants. Leave him alone. And this is something I didn't connect until years later. But it was about a week later. I was having a fight with a kid after school down the alley, and the principal was watching us leave. And I waved at the principal, and he was just, super suspect. But the next day at school, he pulls me aside, not the other kid that I went off the playground with, pulls me aside and begins to beat the crap out of me.
The principal?
The principal. And he made my little brother watch. And he just beat the crap out of me, over and over. And it's the reason why my mom ran for school board and got on school board so she could stop people like that. But yeah, he beat the crap out of me. And I realized later it was because of what I did in that class. And I stood up for myself and I said something that was different than what everyone else was saying. So that really prepared me for what was to come. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you say he's beating you up, he's punching you in the face, throwing you around?
He was an old man with very little coordination. I don't think he'd ever worked out a day in his life. But he kept trying to spank me, but ended up punching me in the back. He would turn me around, punch me in the back, and kept throwing me against the wall, and my head was hitting this hard wall. And I remember being humiliated. I was so humiliated, and I thought, oh, this is my fault. This is me. I deserve this. And we had those little flip-top desks in our classroom, and so I kept opening the desk and putting my head in there and sobbing, and the whole desk was shaking, and I'd stop crying, and I'd put the desk lid down, and did that all day. But
going through something like that in 4th grade.
It was more traumatizing for my brother, though.
Really?
Yeah, because he had to watch. So
Oh, so what? So at that point, you were just kind of like, when did you start did you understand then you were gay?
I didn't know the word gay, but I understood that I was different, and I loved it. I loved being different. Because everyone already told me I was, and I when I started to feel more reasons why I was different. I mean, the boys were ruthless on the playground. There was a kid who would always turn to me and say, "Jude, you're not like the other boys, are you?" And I was like, I don't know. Am I not? Am I? I have no idea. But yeah, they would just torment me like that, and then yeah, things.
That's wild.
Yeah.
What so at what point, as you continue to grow up, do you then understand like what it is that's different about you?
So that's hard because I mean I always thought it was because my dad was who he was. My dad was a really bad drunk, and very abusive to the whole family, and would make scenes all over town.
And he's a white cowboy, right?
He's a white cowboy, yeah.
This is probably where your racism of white people stems from.
Yeah.
Kidding. Kidding.
Can't wait to see this.
We'll edit that part.
But yeah,
we like to keep it pretty informal on the I Am Redemption podcast.
I think that's a good way to keep it. Messy is good.
Yeah,
messy is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the kids wouldn't come to our house. They wouldn't come to my birthday parties, and I thought it was because of him. But I realized later too it was because of how they saw me and how they perceived me. But once I started to lean into that, once I started to understand it better, and realize that it was all of me that was different, and it felt powerful.
Yeah.
It felt really, really powerful. And actually that gave me a lot of agency that I never felt before, and an agency to stand up to my father, agency to stand up to other kids at school. And then my sisters followed suit, and they both became huge advocates for the queer community at a very young age, which is fantastic. I think that's the whole reason why my sister Amanda became prom queen, because she was not popular. She wasn't the most popular girl at school. She wasn't, all those stereotypical things that you think makes a prom queen.
Right.
But all the people who felt smashed and invisible and just put upon, they all just adored my sisters because they were such huge advocates for difference.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
I mean, I yes.
So when you, in your time, how old were you when you ended up leaving Nebraska?
Gosh. Well, I took a year in between high school and college. Never told you this, but I got hospitalized my senior year because they thought I was an addict, and I was using that to mask a bunch of other stuff. But I was actually a bulimic, and I had a severe eating disorder. Like at the time I was hospitalized, I was 145 pounds, which you can see that would be very weird. In between high school and college, I took a whole year just to try and find myself, which I realize now in my life, this is what I'm doing again,
right.
Taking some time to find myself.
Yeah.
But I left Nebraska as a contract performer. I would leave intermittently, but I finally left Nebraska when I was 23.
So when you're getting out there and you're doing your acting and you're traveling around, are you then finding more people that are away from rural Nebraska that are more like you?
Yeah, yes, and Nebraska queers are different. I say this, I don't mean to generalize, and if somebody from Nebraska who's queer happens to see this.
Is queer a bad term?
No.
Is it one of those ones you can use it, but I can't?
No, you can talk about the queer community.
Okay.
Yeah, and like that's, I love that question. Queer used to be a bad term, right, or a derogatory term, and the queer community really took it back. Queer for me, and the reason why I love queer, because I don't consider myself gay or a gay man, or I just consider myself very different.
Oh.
And so queer is this really encompassing term for people who feel very different, who don't meet the norms or the binary or the construct, people who reject the construct, really. And so, but yeah, I started to meet more people, more queer people, mostly gay men, I guess. And then the queer women. I love the queer women that I met along the way. How informal are we here?
It's be you, 100% you.
Best foursome I've ever had, like 3 lesbians. I was like, I know. I know. But yeah, but that's what queer allows for me. So this freedom. But yeah, not a ton of queer people.
Right. So I remember telling you this story, but so I grew up in Northeast Ohio. Thinking back now, I think I went to school with one kid who, if I had to guess, was probably queer, but it wasn't something that I had come in contact with a lot. Right. And I remember I had moved to North Carolina. I was struggling a bit, and so I was bouncing around all over the country, and I ended up getting a waiter job. And there was one guy there who was very over the top.
Very probably flamboyant.
Very flamboyant. Yeah. He was very flamboyant, and he was a waiter as well. And I remember we were all sitting around drinking after work one night, all the wait staff, and everybody was sitting in booths, and there was only one spot open, and it was next to the what'd you use? Flagrant? What'd you
flamboyant.
Say? Very flamboyant gentleman. Yeah. And so I did not sit there, and I remember just sitting up there leaning against the bar, and he stood up and, can I use a derogatory term if he's the one that said it?
Sure.
Am I going to get in trouble?
You're telling a story.
Okay. So he stood up and looked over at me and he goes, "What's the matter, Shawn? You don't want to sit next to the fag?" And I felt so stupid. You know what I mean? Like because it was me, I was being ridiculous. You know what I mean? That I didn't want to sit down. Who ends up being this awesome dude? You know what I mean? Super, super cool and stuff like that. But I had just never been around it, so I'm like, oh, I can't be by him, or people are gonna think that of me, or whatever. Which is all ridiculous, stupid things that a young person like myself would have thought. And he ended up being one of the coolest guys I ever met there at that entire time, and I'll never forget because he was one to throw out jokes and talk shit and stuff like that. And so they had changed our aprons from really long aprons to short aprons. And I remember putting my apron on. I'm like, I fucking hate these. And he looked over. He's like, why? I was like, I don't know. They're just fucking gay. And he went, like that. And I was like, oh my, I'm so sorry. And he busted out laughing. Like he didn't care. And you know what I mean? It was experiences like that like got me. It was like, wait a minute, this is stupid. Why do I think any different of, who cares who he wants to sleep with or whatever he wants to do? He's a good dude and stuff like that. So that was kind of my first experience of getting out into the world and then starting to see it. And then, I mean, luckily now I'm 40 and we live in Austin. So it's, it's something you see every day. And I love that, we're now in a world where people feel that much more comfortable to be them.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for it as well. I feel so much gratitude in the fact that that people are starting to live into their authentic selves, because the construct is so tight and so constrictive that people couldn't be themselves. And so I remember, even has nothing to do with queerness really, but I going to another YMCA that had leadership that maybe wasn't great leadership, maybe very constrictive leadership. And I remember just being free with myself. I think that's where we start. Be free with yourself so others feel that freedom or the agency to be free with themselves. And I remember like the comments coming from people when I was just genuinely interested in who they were, asked them a lot of questions, told them that they mattered, told them that they deserved happiness, And it was really cool to see people start to say, this is the first time in my career that I've been my authentic self at the YMCA. And that broke my heart, but it also felt very liberating as well. Now I have a question for you. Back to our friend in the booth. And this is me, I've never asked this question.
Go ahead.
Do straight men think that all gay or queer men want to have sex with them?
No, I mean, okay. I don't.
Okay.
No.
I've always wondered that. I don't know why I've never asked it.
No, but. I mean, I think you'd have to be a pretty self-centered dude to think every gay dude walking around wants to bang you. No, no, I didn't think he wanted to. I wasn't nervous about that, but I just, in my naive young mind, I mean, I was probably only I don't know. If I was drinking at the bar, I was for sure 21. I couldn't have been under 21. But at whatever age I was still naive, naive to the point where it's like, oh my God, if I'm standing around talking with him or sitting in them, then people are going to think that of me.
Yeah.
Which luckily I'm secure enough in my life where I don't care what anybody thinks of me. It was silly, but no, I didn't ever get the vibes that he wanted to.
Yeah.
But
well, you should hear what I think about you.
Huh?
You should hear what I think of you.
What do you think of me?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
It was a joke. I was making a.
I got you.
Real quick, you just bring your mic up just a hair.
Yeah.
A little bit higher.
Is that
There you go. Perfect. That's
okay?
You should be good at
Get
you
that
should
down.
you should,
It
you
does.
should be good at that.
Here, let me make it.
Let's do that. Yeah.
These are the conversations people need to see.
Yeah.
If there's anything that happens in this that you don't want in there, just say so and we'll edit
Yeah.
it out. You're about to be done at the Y. Let's shake things up a little bit. So, has there been times in your life, and I think you kind of already spoke to it a bit, but the tone of your skin or the fact that you're queer or anything like that, has that stopped opportunities from happening in your life?
Yeah, as an actor, for sure.
Really?
You know, I remember auditioning for films. I auditioned for a film that had very, very clearly, it was about the Alamo. Had two sides. There's all the white people and there's all the brown people. And I wasn't brown enough to be with the brown people. I wasn't white enough to be with white people, you know.
Ain't that a bitch?
I know. It's like, so I started tanning. No, I didn't. But yeah, there's that has come up a lot in performance, a lot in theater as my queerness. And so, I mean, I don't even consider, it took me a long time to deprogram myself from hearing myself the way other people heard me. And so, like those kids on the playground thinking I had a faggy voice or something. And so it took me a long time to not think about it, but to get people to believe in all parts of me, my masculinity, my femininity, my brownness, my whiteness, to really see past all of that and just hear the authentic presentation
Right.
of the words or the feelings. So
Right. It's funny, like, I mean, now Hollywood and movies and acting is so, from what you're describing now, it's completely on the polar opposite end, I feel like. And I just remember when we were going to with the documentary 100 Miles to Redemption, when we were going to the film festivals, how a lot of the big film festivals declined taking on our film because myself and the director were both straight white males, and they flat out said that's not what we're not what we're looking for this year, and this and that. And even with issues like addiction, mental health, you know, military, PTSD, all that stuff, it still like wasn't good enough. And it was like, oh, all right, like.
How did that make you feel when that was the reason?
Probably like you felt all your life. I mean, number one, you know, I'd be lying if I say, like, you know, it makes me turn internal, like, what is, you know, I'm not good enough, my story's not good enough, but it really, this is such a layered question and layered answer, but just, you know, with the opioid epidemic being such a prevalent thing, but, you know, people's attention spans are so small, it's like, you know, one week it's Ukraine, next week it's the Hawaii fires, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They forgot about the opioid addiction 3 years ago,
Right.
you know what I mean? But I was like, man, with something that's literally killing more people than cancer at this point, like, how is this not at the forefront of things? So I'm disappointed, but, you know, luckily with my life, I've been able to kind of taper expectations and just trust in the world or God or the universe that, you know, whatever's supposed to happen is going to happen. And if this doesn't happen, then there was a reason for it. And hopefully down the road, I'll know why.
I really appreciate that answer. I think that's very powerful because a lot of times in my experience with people who didn't want to consider that other people could be represented, you know, like the YMCA, people who leave the YMCA because we put up on the stairs this photo, you've seen the photos on the stairs of people, all different kinds of people. And I didn't realize when we put it up, there was black faces, brown faces, and there was a white woman. But this guy was so angry because there was no white male face on the stairs, you know, in this exhibit. And I told him, I said, you know, but it's been your story all along.
Yeah.
It's time for somebody else to tell their story.
Yeah.
And he just wouldn't have it. Quit his membership, told me all the things he hated about me, and that I was the problem with this country. So I was like, okay, I'll be the problem with this country then. That sounds fine to me.
Yeah. It's interesting what you're saying because you are exactly right. It has been, you know, my story, our story for so long. I don't know, like a lot of what me and you've talked about in the past, just my personal feeling is when somebody gets to the age of an adult, what they do with their life, whether it's transitioning to another gender or anything like that, like have a ball. If you're happy, I'm happy.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me at all. But the kids is where I get hung up on, like the effect that it has on kids. And, working in the addiction field, I hear so many things and understand why adults are the way they are when they've had the childhood that they have. And so do you think there'll be any effect on, like, because what you're saying is valid. It's been your story this entire time. Now it's time for them to hear another story. But with still a large portion of this country still being, young white people, do you think that's going to have the reverse effect on them?
Yeah.
Or are they of a different mindset, different generation?
I mean, different mindset, different generation for sure, but there still is the old mindset. We talked about paradigms a little bit ago, but this old paradigm that's trying to pull them back in. And, something you and I talked about, well, we won't go there yet. Yeah, we will. So something you and I had talked about. First of all, I want you to know, like when I say something like, it's been your story the whole time, I say that with love.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Good. Okay.
This is why we're here right now, because I know we both know where each other's heart's always at.
Yeah. And you and I had this conversation about kids, right? And I know that my niece, I shouldn't even say this, edit that out. Kids who are allowed to live into their authentic selves and given the resources to live into their authentic selves, they're going to change the world. They are absolutely going to change the world. But if they aren't given the kind of resources or care that they need at a young age to be able to live their authentic self, that's detrimental to their existence. It's not good for them. So I think what you were talking about before, this flip, is it going to flip? I'd love to see it flip for the goodness, right? I'd love to see people to start to stop living their agendas on everybody else and just live their life for themselves, but for the collective as well. Like, we just hosted the Mandela Washington Fellows. And I think you remember them from last year at the YMCA, but Mandela Washington Fellowship was this partnership with Young African Leader Institute and with Barack Obama to bring young African leaders to this country for this really cool immersive program. And they end the immersive program with a 4-week professional development experience, and we always do it at the Y. And I just think about what they said when they were leaving, and I said, what advice would you give to people from the U.S.? What would you hope for us? And they all commented that they would hope for us to stop being such an individualistic society, because that's where we're harming, because we're individualistic, but trying to impose our beliefs, our values, our opinions on everybody else, as opposed to understanding what the collective flow of energy could do for our country, for our existence.
Right.
Interesting story about that too. When I asked one of the fellows, who happens to be advisor to the president of Chad.
Okay.
So I spent 4 weeks with her. When I asked her like what she was taking back to Chad, she said to me, she goes, Jude, very, very Muslim country, very strict beliefs and faith. But she said to me, Jude, before this experience, she said, I didn't know any LGBTQIA plus people. She said, and then I met you and your husband. And she said, I was like, whoa. And she said, but I spent 4 weeks with you. And she goes, you changed my mind. You changed my heart. She said, your love for one another is so beautiful and authentic, and it's so powerful. And the way that you're so kind and so open and so welcoming, and the way that you think about other people's experiences. She said, I'm going back to Chad, and I'm going to advise the president for us to change how we view LGBTQI+. So, I mean, it's about getting into experiences with one another, right? So that individualistic thing doesn't allow this person who's got this really closed heart about someone who is queer, or about someone who is brown or black, about someone who's just different than them. when they don't allow themselves to be part of that experience, when they don't allow themselves to share their humanity and to let others share their humanity, we can't learn or grow.
Right.
We just continue to stay stuck. I think that's why it's so important. Like we've already talked about, like I think you and I come from very different places, and we've had some conversations that were very different perspectives. But by doing that, like I'll speak for myself, just this increased love for you.
Yeah.
This increased love. And I think that if we could all do more of that, we'd start to see that love meter just go, because we're just, okay, that's who you are.
Right. And yeah, I agree 100%. And unfortunately, the rest of the world is not like you or I. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that may have asked questions to, or just had a surface level conversation, and there wasn't that welcoming of, oh, you don't understand something about me, go ahead and ask me.
Yeah.
It was immediately like, oh, you don't know what I'm about, you're an asshole, don't talk to me, like, just because we don't think the same.
Yeah.
So it was a breath of fresh air to, the better I got to know you, the more comfortable I felt, you know what I mean? And every time we'd see each other, hug each other, say hello, but there was often times where I was pulling you like, hey, what does this mean? Or like, what's the proper way to this? And so it was just invaluable to me.
And I love that. And the thing that we have to be careful about is that a lot of marginalized communities, they don't want to do the work for you, right? They don't want to do the work for other people anymore. Like, you know what? You want to change because you need to change, right? Because you need to open your perspective, but you've got to do the work. I know that that's something that people really struggle with. So, but yeah.
So, you've had your adversity due to your, color of your skin or your sexual orientation. Is that the right word?
Sure.
Is that if you're queer or not?
My identity. You can just say identity.
Your identity.
Yeah.
There we go. A lot of terms I'm not fully sure of. So it seems like if you watch social media, or if you look at social media or anything like that, there's people out there who just want the world to be all sunshine and rainbows and understanding and love and stuff like that. And I get it. Like, it's, if we lived in a fantasy world, it would be like that. I'm curious as to what you think. Like, you've been through this adversity, and though it was painful and then sad at some points like that, it's all made you who you are today.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so that's where it's like, for me to go around the world and think everyone's just going to always agree with what I think or love everything about me at all times is silly. That's like ridiculous. It's never going to happen. That's never going to be a world that we live in. And I wouldn't change any of the things that have happened to me because I love who I am today. Yeah. How do you feel like, the people that said derogatory things to you or anything like that? Like, what's your feeling on what I'm saying?
I mean, I used to be really angry. And I think I still am really angry. There's a rage that is just under the surface, especially now in our current climate, societal issues. But I'm going to work on that rage.
Right.
I'm really excited to work on that rage.
I can always tell it's just bubbling right under the surface. I can tell.
Yeah. Just walk around slapping people. Now though, we were talking about this before we started talking with the microphones, but blessing others. Like, the more that I bless others, especially when I'm going to go into this place of anger or retaliation, or I'm going to write this narrative in my head about how awful they are, I'm turning to blessing them first.
Right.
Turning to blessing them first, because when I bless them, I bless me.
Right.
Right.
So when you're saying, just, I know what you're meaning, but just for them to understand, what does blessing somebody look like?
Yeah. And this took me a while to understand what that was, because I'm not a religious person.
Right.
I always had that attached to religion. But blessing is like, may Shawn have the most beautiful day. May he experience love. May he know that people care about him. And may he feel successful.
So if I just cut you off in traffic, that's what you've
Yeah.
turned to doing now?
Yeah, like may he get wherever he's going safely. He's
Right.
he's in a hurry. May he get there safely, and may there not be anything negative or emergent waiting for him.
Right.
So I think it's really, I mean, I've done that with certain presidents.
Yeah.
In my head, just bless them over and over and over and over, no matter what. But I think it's important. It's important to stop yourself. And the more that you stop yourself from leaning into the negative, the abundance mindset just comes.
Yeah.
Abundance mindset. And I can do anything. I can change the world if I stay in that abundant mindset. And if you imagine everyone trying to get into that place of blessing, everyone get into that place of gratitude, and everyone starting to form that abundant mindset, that divisiveness that is plaguing our world, it'll start to shift. It'll start to change. And I believe that we've seen it. We've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in my own life. I mean, the reason why I'm afforded the opportunity to leave my current job and to relocate to New Mexico and live under the mountains and not work for a little while and work on myself is because we've cultivated a mindset of abundance. And my husband has this fantastic job now that he's been working towards. So it does come. It's the law of circulation, right?
Right.
The law of circulation. We have to keep that circulation in flow with the things that are beautiful. And, something that you talked about, like, you're not all about all the good feels, all good vibes. And I really don't love it when people say all good vibes here, all good vibes here, or they use aloha as a way to not have difficult conversations. It's the same thing in Denmark. We went there last summer for an anti-racist summit. And there's this thing that's called the happiest place in the world, right, in Denmark. But they have this philosophy, this way of living that is called hygge, Hugge, hygge. And it means that you don't have difficult conversations. So if somebody comes into the space and they are, bashing on a person because they're black, or they're bashing on a person because they're from Afghanistan, or they're a refugee and they're in their country, they say, hygge, we're not going to talk about this. We're not going to confront anybody. We're not going to say, there's a better way to treat people. We're just not going to do it because we have hygge, right? And it's the same thing like I've experienced with some folks who use, no, aloha. I'm like, no, let's have this conversation because you're hiding behind something that is keeping you from dipping into realness, keeping you from experiencing somebody else's humanity that'll change your life.
Right. I've never heard anybody do the aloha thing.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
It's typically, here we go again. It's typically white people. So.
Jesus. It always comes back to you white people.
Yeah.
We got to do a white people trigger warning, like countdown. In 3, 2, 1.
We got to do better, white people. Come on. One of the things I remember coming in and talking to you about was the trans topic with children and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you, do you remember that conversation?
Yeah.
What was your, if you would kind of recap on what your view?
Yeah. And let me you helped me understand in a way. And yes. And I need to throw out a disclaimer too. I'm not the expert when it comes to queerness. I'm not the expert when it comes to anybody else's,
Neither of us are experts in anything. We're just two friends talking right now. Please don't get all wrapped up.
In that, yeah. So that conversation, I think back to, I think your stance was like, kids don't know who they are at that time, and we should just leave them alone, let them come into adulthood and figure out who they really are. And yeah, at first when you and I were talking about that, it pierced me because, because I have trans and non-binary people in my family. And I know a person in my family was literally saved by getting to have the gender affirming care. Mm-hmm. Their truth was so big and loud and powerful. You could not deny it. When a child wakes up in the middle of the night screaming like, stop calling me that. Stop calling me that gender. That's not my gender. That's not who I am. I'm this person. I'm this person. I'm this person. You can't deny it.
Yeah.
You just can't. And so I think that sting when we were having this conversation was just because of the very personal closeness. But I loved that conversation. I love that conversation because I feel like you and I didn't even arrive in the same place like we've talked about. We didn't end up saying, oh yeah, you're right, Shawn, or oh yeah, you're right, Jude. We just heard one another. Mm-hmm. And here we are today, still in love with one another.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, if more people could learn how to navigate and not make someone else's opinion, perspective, whatever about them, we could be good.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I'll be the first person. My opinions change. You know what I mean? I don't feel the same way I did about things at 18 that I did at, you know what I mean, 28, 38, anything like that. But even just you saying that right now, because you didn't say that before about someone in your family and giving me the visual of somebody waking up saying, don't call me that. Like, then it makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm off my limited knowledge or anything like that. You know, I can look at biased stuff online all day long, but unless I can come talk to an actual real person who has dealings with that and they can explain another side, how am I ever supposed to have another, you know what I mean, another conversation another thought on the matter?
And what's so interesting about that, I was just reading an article, I can't remember who wrote it, and I apologize, but it was about there is no anti-bigotry training. There is no anti-racism training. Yeah, we can say that there are trainings and we're doing them. When anti-racism, anti-bigotry, you know, starts to really work, the effort towards it is these conversations, right? Is allowing yourself to be in spaces that are uncomfortable. I mean, because when we remind ourselves why we're uncomfortable because we're about to learn something. Mm-hmm. There's discomfort because I'm about to know something new. That discomfort is just the edge of what I've known. That's all it is. And if we can change our relationship with those circumstances, this is the edge of what I've known, then we can move beyond it.
Right.
And we can move beyond it with help, you know, side by side, hand in hand, into a place that uncharted territory. And we can do that without feeling like we're going to die.
Right. For sure. So recently I've seen more of it. What's your thoughts, or can you explain to me the rationale? You talked about the podcast you like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's why we were filming or not, but you were talking about a podcast you like, and it happens to be drag queens. And now recently I've seen where they're doing drag shows, or people in drag are reading stories to elementary school kids and stuff like that. If you don't mind, what's your thoughts on that?
It's so interesting to me that has become such a problem for so many people in this country, because they want drag shows to be identified or classified as this, you know, adult business or a sexual business, and it's so interesting because people don't have problems with strip clubs or with massages with happy endings or whatever. I don't, you know, but for me, like, I love drag queens so much because it's this authenticity that comes out. It's you know, if you ever sat with a drag queen and just listen to them talk, and what happens when they get into drag and they feel liberated, they feel like their authentic selves, their true selves. I think, first of all, we're all in drag. All of us, every single one of us, we're in drag, right? We put on clothes, we're in drag. That's my opinion.
Okay.
And that I get that from RuPaul. But kids need to be exposed to all these different things. Kids need to understand that there's not just the binary. Kids need to understand that there's not just a boy and this is how he acts, and this is a girl and this is how she acts.
Right.
And boys wear these shoes and these pants and these shirts, and girls wear these shoes and dresses and whatever. They need to understand now that there's this entire spectrum of being.
Right.
And it's so gorgeous, and it can be celebrated.
Right.
It's nothing scary. So I say, you know, the more drag, the better.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think not what bothers me about that, but what bothers me, like, in the world, I guess we'll say, like, in school, you know what I mean? Like, in all honesty, you know, I graduated high school and maybe use 10%, you know what I mean, of that. And, like, at no time was there any emphasis on, like, here's how you buy a house. Here's how you set up an electric bill. Like, like, tangible things here's how you balance a checkbook. Here's what interest rates mean. Like, all this stuff that didn't really prepare me for life or anything. There was no emphasis on that. And it's like, now, all right, so we're not going to focus on that, but we're going to focus on, like, all these other things. You You know what I mean? I'm not against kids being exposed, and you know what I mean? Especially with the way you just put it about the family member you have waking up and screaming. Like, they deserve to have that. If they know, they know. But like, out of a group of 20 kids that go in there to listen to this story being read, like, are we now placating to just this, like, the one or two kids instead of as a group? Or like, why is not more focus being put on things that you actually, tangible life skills, you know what I mean? As opposed to now we're going to go in there and talk about which gender you identify as and stuff like that. And just to be clear, my only problem was I didn't start making good decisions till I was literally 35 years old. So to ever think of me making a life-altering, changing decision any time before that would have been a mistake, whatever I decided to do.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, it's not about who's telling the story. It's the story that's being told to the children, right? That's first and foremost. So, I mean, you know, for the most part, you know, straight people, straight teachers, whatever, have been reading to children for ages and ages and ages. And drag queens exist in this world. So why wouldn't they be able to read a kid a story? It's not performative. It's not like they're like subversive. Like I'm going to go read stories to these children so I can influence them in some kind of way, or so that they can, it's just that they can experience difference, right? It'd be the same thing. Like, you know, my very good friend, Andy Castile at the Town Lake YMCA, who has Down syndrome, like giving him the opportunity to represent and be in front of these children and tell stories, giving a person in a hijab the opportunity to sit down with these kids and tell stories. Because at the end of the day, these kids need to understand anybody can tell them a story. It doesn't matter who that person is. As long as they, you know, are good, they have good intentions, and they're going to give the story life, you know? Right. So, yeah, I guess that's my response to that. It doesn't matter who's telling the story. It's just that somebody's being told a story. Now, I agree with you. We are not teaching people the skills to live life, right? In general. The thing I can say to that is I think about what's in the media, what we see in films, what we see in books, what we see in commercials. You know, it's all about living the American dream, like having the house and, you know, having money and having all these things that make your house the best house, you know, better than the neighbor's house or whatever. So it's there. It's being subconsciously taught, but I think more intention around teaching it, more intention around, you know, financial literacy, more intention around, you know, living the best life that's going to, you know, leave the least amount of carbon footprint for the next people. I think that's where we have to live into.
Yeah, that's good. Man, you're too smart.
I'm not smart at all. I'm not smart at all.
The way you put it about it's not about who's reading the story. It's about the story being told. Like, you can't really argue with that. Pretty good. You came prepared.
No, I didn't actually. I was like, yes, what's going to happen? What's going to happen?
I forgot what I was going to say. That was good. I got to collect my thoughts. Do you think so? I think it's like, in number one, I'll ask you, do you think the world, on your day-to-day experience and stuff like that, do you think it's as bad with the racism, hate, negativity, all that stuff? Do you think it's as bad as it's portrayed in the news and social media?
I do.
Do you really?
I do. Yeah, I do. I mean, it's just so strange how, you know, think about this country. 19% of this country identifies as LGBTQI+.
There's an I now?
LGBTQIA+. So lesbian, bisexual, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, asexual, and then everything else. And it can feel confusing, and it can feel ridiculous. You know, I understand that. But I do think it is as bad as it is when there's this much attention on 19% of the population of this country, and far, far fewer trans. You know, when there's that much attention spent on this very small marginalized group of people, or very small group of people to marginalize them, It just seems odd, doesn't it, that people are efforting so hard to keep this minority group way down.
Right. Well, no, that's what that kind of, I feel like what you just said kind of goes along with my thoughts, or my point is that, like, because it's such a small subgroup of the LGBTQIA plus. Is that right?
Yeah.
Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Let's go. See, I'm listening. But you see so much of it online.
Yeah.
It would have you believe that it's a bigger issue than an actual. Not saying it's not an issue.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's my Instagram feed is just all that, all the time, and it's like that's where I get frustrated, because it's like this bullshit that I see on Instagram in the morning when I'm having my coffee is not what I see out there on the everyday, day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I could probably count on. I mean, in the past year, I may have actually met 2, 3 people maybe that are trans. Like, it's not like I'm not seeing that every day. So it's
Right.
like, but if you look online, I feel like I'm going to walk out my door and every second person I see is going to be trans, and it's going to be hate, and there's going to be racism, and there's going to be this. And it's just not something that I think is going on at the rate at which the media or social media portrays.
And doesn't that scare you, to have it be so intensified on social media and media? And yet you're like, well, I didn't see any trans people today.
Right.
But that's how much the people who are hate them, hate queer people.
Or is it the people running for office know it's a hot topic and they're throwing it out there?
It could be, yeah. I mean, they want to keep the status quo. They want to keep themselves in power.
Right.
That's what this is about. This is about keeping the people who want to be in power, as opposed to offering power to others, offering power to everybody. When I think about, first of all, my Instagram is so carefully curated. It's just all drag queens, trans people, queer people, and men doing squats. That's my Instagram.
Okay.
You're not on there yet doing squats, but
Okay.
I think it's we get to choose. We get to choose what we bring into our lives, and we need to choose better things. We need to choose love. We need to choose hope. We need to choose success for somebody else. I think back. This has very little to do with what we were just talking about, sort of, but I think about how many people will go hungry in this world tonight.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the night, people go to bed hungry. It's not a resource issue, right? That's not a resource issue. It's a greed issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's an awareness issue. There is more than enough in this world, more than enough love, more than enough, but there are people who just want to hold on to their power, so much so that other people will be harmed by it.
Yeah.
And they're okay with that.
Yeah.
Or they try to ignore it. There was something else you said that I wanted to come back to that I loved. Keep talking. We'll figure it out.
What do you think? So I want to be careful how I say this, because I don't want to sound ignorant, but like, I'm all for, watching a movie and there being diversity and stuff like that. What I think, there's certain platforms, we'll say, or certain, movies or whatever, where I feel like it's forced.
Can you give an example?
Changing characters, and there already being a story created, and now we're going to change this character to be this so that these people are represented, and this and that. Like, see, this is coming out sounding bad, and I sound like an ignorant straight white male, but I like it when it's organic and it's natural, like the everyday world is, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be force-fed a movie that's like, I'm watching this movie to escape reality, right? And I don't need issues or agendas being pushed to me, or like. Does it make sense what I'm saying?
First of all, something I want to say is, like, it's okay to sound ignorant.
Okay.
And especially when someone like you is very aware of the person you want to be,
Mm-hmm.
and very aware of the things you've known, and that there might not be coherence.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've sounded ignorant a million times this week. But it's about knowing who you want to be and knowing what's best for the world you live in, right?
Right.
So to your point, it feels forced. It doesn't feel natural and organic. Because for so long, people like me or people like that black man over there or that black family over there, that Asian family over there, they were cut out of everything, cut out of all the media, cut out of movies and stories and books and all kinds of stuff. And so it's somebody's saying like, we've got to wake up and pay attention. So it's going to feel a little bit pushed because you've always experienced things this way.
Mm-hmm.
Again, back to a paradigm. I've always experienced it this way.
Yeah.
And now we're trying to experience it for all. And I think about this, the ultimate, like how Jesus is depicted as white.
Mm-hmm.
That was not what Jesus was.
That's
so like
ridiculous.
we're changing the narrative whenever we want to change the narrative to suit our own wants, needs, and desires. Right. So, and from my perspective, and I'm so sorry that you experience the current film media this way. It's a relief to me when I turn on the TV, or I don't watch regular TV, but like Netflix or something, and I see a queer person represented, and I see a brown, Asian, black person represented. Like, it's such relief. For so long, to feel so invisible in this world, to finally be seen, is a really powerful thing. And everyone needs to be seen. Yeah. Everyone needs to feel seen and held. And so just for a long time, it just wasn't that way.
Right. No, I agree, and that's what I'm trying to articulate is I want everybody to be heard, but I feel like when there's more focus put on that than like the actual story we're telling or the movie or whatever it is, where it's like, and there's, again, I watch sports to escape everyday life. That's my time to zone out and not have to think about these things that are sad and depressing and stuff like that. But then it's become that, you know what I mean? Like where now they're pushing the issues, and it's like, this is not why I watch this type of sport or this game is to, you know what I mean? If you as an individual, now I'm getting super confident. I'm going to get canceled for this episode. If you as, by no means am I just saying shut up and dribble the ball. I'm not saying that. But like if you on your social media platform want to talk about that stuff, awesome. But like if I'm tuning in to watch you play basketball, I just want to watch you play basketball.
Think about this though.
Okay. She's going to make me look stupid in
no,
3, 2,
not at all.
1.
If you have a captive audience, right? If you have a large captive audience, you can start to move the needle, as opposed to screaming in your quiet space that's just yours, where you've got like a limited audience, but like to have this audience finally, and where you feel empowered again, right? You're taking your power back. I think you have a responsibility to tell your story. I think you have a responsibility to say, this is how it's always been, but this is the way it's going to be now. And just recognize it.
Right.
It was funny. We talk about all of these things all of the time in our household. And my husband is a yoga teacher. And he's always trying to make a playlist that represents. And that's what we have to think, too.
Did you say a yoga teacher or a yoked teacher?
He's a yoga teacher.
Yoga teacher, okay.
But we have to think about when we're doing things, who is represented? How are we representing the larger canvas, right? How are we representing? And so, but we talk about this all the time. And he was really good about this. But one day he was making a playlist for his yoga class. And my nephew, who at the time was 13, was listening to him build his playlist. And he goes, uh-oh. And I said, what? And he goes, Uncle Scott forgot about other people. It's all white people on his playlist. And I was like, oh, do you want to go say something to him? And he was like, yeah. And knowing that in Scott's class, there's going to be all kinds of people, right? So someone will have a moment where they hear something that's familiar to them or that feels like them. But for me, that moment when the 13-year-old is like, oh, I'm gaining an awareness that we need to be sure that everyone is represented at some point in time.
Right.
I think it's important.
That's good. See, you made me look stupid.
No, I didn't.
No, this is, I mean, this right here is why we're having the, you know what I mean? Like it's so rare to just be able to find somebody in your life that you can have these type of conversations with and no, we may not agree on every single thing, but there is common ground. And I do understand everything you're saying. There's nothing you said besides drag queens reading in school. No, I'm kidding. You know, we don't have to agree on everything, but now at least understand
Yeah.
the thought process of where somebody's coming from.
But here's something that just occurred to me is like you're hearing me, and you're gaining some forward movement by understanding me.
Yeah.
And something that I could do more is try to understand you better, right? Try to understand what is it about drag queens reading to children that doesn't sit well with you, and why do you think that is?
I think being a kid is tough, number one. Way more now so than when you or I were young. But I just go back to that mindset that I was in back then. Like, I mean, I couldn't even sit in a sex education class where I couldn't stop dying laughing for 20 minutes because they said penis or vagina.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and so like, am I to the point at that point in my life where, you know what I mean? Like, it's a confusing time.
Were you ready to hear it?
As it was for me, let alone now you want to start throwing in stuff about gender, or like trying to understand, like now we're talking about gender and all that, and now there's somebody who's practicing drag here. Like, what is this?
What does it mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think kids are going to find out soon enough, especially, I mean, you can't walk into a restaurant without seeing a kid under, you know what I mean, that's single digits years old looking at an iPad doing whatever. And so is it just like, is that the time or the place? My personal feelings, like I don't have children, but if I did, that's a conversation I would want to have with my child. I send my child to school to learn those things, those life skills and math, science, and all that stuff. To me, that's not what we should be doing.
Yeah. You know, I think from a personal perspective, if I had an opportunity to see a queer person or a person expressing their identity without fear at a young age, I would have been like, fuck yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, God. And again, we go back to, it doesn't matter what information, it matters what information they're getting. It doesn't matter who's giving the information, as long as they're giving authentic truth, right? They're capital T truth. They're giving the truth. There was something else I was going to say about that.
Or like, why I had this thought, and you know, why don't they have? Why wouldn't they have like some form of like elective class where, like, if this is something you're into, just like they do in a college. If this is something you're into, something you want to know more about, go learn about it. If you don't, this is what you know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm not a kid. I just feel like it would have been super confusing for me at that age to.
Of course, because you are, I mean, all of us are being brought up in this male, female, binary, constructed world of what a boy is supposed to be and what a girl is supposed to be, and there's nothing else. A man is supposed to look like this and wear this and be this, and that can be really uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So I have a question for you, and I apologize if this is really.
I love this. You're the only podcast guest I think I've ever had that actually asked me questions back. I love it.
I love inquiry. It's my favorite. So do you find drag queens threatening? So what's confusing about a drag queen?
For a child?
Well, I mean, you're not a child right now.
No, I mean, there's nothing confusing to me about it at 40 years old, but I think at that time, like, I mean, obviously this is a super complex topic that we're sitting here to talk about, right?
Yes.
And at the ages we are, we can sit here and agree that this is a very super complex topic that we're talking about. Now take this super complex topic and put it into the head of a single-digit-year-old child, and it's like, is this the time for that?
Yeah, I would argue
please.
Yeah,
I love everybody. I support everybody to be who they want to be when they grow up and do whatever they want to do. This is not coming from malice or hate. It's just me not understanding.
Yeah, I think I would call that a transference or a projection of what you're experiencing or feeling, because I don't think we can speculate about what kids are thinking or feeling. Unless we don't need to speculate at all, really. What we can do is sit down and be like, tell me about your experience. Mm-hmm. What was that experience like for you? Do you have questions? Then we need more of that.
Yeah, I agree.
More of us sitting with one another saying, like, what's going through you right now?
Right.
How are you experiencing this? Because when we do that, as opposed to saying like that thing right there, I mean, because, well, I don't love guns. I don't love guns.
Yeah.
And when I see guns all over the place, I'm like, oh my God, that must be fucking up these kids.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying like, hey kid, do you feel fucked up right now?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say that to a kid, but I mean, I think it's really important that we ask those questions and don't put our thoughts and feelings on them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the best thing we could do.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But I mean, does a child that age, do they know what they want? So that I just saw. Tell me what you think about this. I just saw this video online the other day, and I don't know if you saw this too. Let me know. But they had a small kid, a small young boy sitting there at the table, and I don't know if it was dad or somebody put 2 Oreos out, and then he put $10,000 in cash, and he said, "Here you go, pick one. Yeah, you can only pick one." And then he reached for the Oreos and picked the Oreos, and then the guy said something to him. "You sure this is the decision you want to make? This and that." Like that. And so it's like, all right, now take that example and now talk about gender or something like that. The kid just turned down 10 grand for 2 Oreos. Is that a decision that any adult would make?
No.
Right.
But the kid picked what they wanted.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about.
But he didn't know what was.
Well, but again, we're putting our values on him.
True.
Right? I wouldn't turn down $10,000 for 2 Oreo cookies.
Right.
But that $10,000 doesn't matter to him. It's the Oreo cookies, right?
If we were teaching him the life skills he should be learning in school, that 10 grand would matter. No, I'm kidding.
But that's what it comes down to. Is for me, is that the kid chose what he wanted, and that's beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. See that, and again, I love hearing your side of things because it does make me think of it differently.
I love hearing. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I think I've told you this before. Until like 2000 and I think it was 14, I couldn't even sit with a white straight male without my voice cracking, breaking, without my eyes tearing up, my hands shaking. I was so afraid. And I think a lot of that had to do with my dad. But like for me to be sitting here with you, right? With your background, with your experience, with your maleness and masculinity, that never would have happened, Shawn, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. It wouldn't have happened. We all have to dip our toes into the discomfort, right? So that we can learn from one another and so that we can bridge these gaps. Because you and I bridging this gap, bridging this chasm, it means a lot.
Yeah.
It means a lot.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And just so anybody listening to this knows, this conversation will continue long after, between me and him, long after the podcast is over. So don't think that
we're being performative.
Not that I'm being performative, but that I'm like stuck in my mindset like I am today,
yeah.
that I would be tomorrow or anything. Like,
And
yeah,
me too.
just like you say,
Yeah.
because there could have been a very easy point in your life where you're like, I'm never fucking talking to a straight white dude again.
Right.
Fuck those guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm tired of my people being held down, though. I know that.
Yeah. It's true.
I'm gonna take that part out of you saying that, and that's gonna be
Perfect. Do it.
no Jew footage, just you saying that.
Tired of my people being held down. The Irish folks. You're half Irish, right?
We are. Yeah.
So I got some fun questions for you.
Yes,
now.
please ask.
All right. Do you have any questions?
I always have a million questions. I guess my question, especially as people are listening to this, watching this, and people will be getting their own confusion, their own reaction to this conversation, and they might hate both of us or love both of us, whatever. But what do you want the people who are hearing this, who are watching this, what do you want them to have to take away?
Hopefully in this episode they heard something that made them feel inquisitive, where they're like, all right, well, I don't understand that. Let me find somebody like a Jude in their life that they can go talk to and become more informed. Because I guarantee you, if we have a tendency when we're searching online or social media to only ever search the things that support our current feelings or thoughts.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't ever look at the other side of the coin, how can you ever come to,
Yeah.
how can we ever get to where me and you are at? You know what I mean? And and have that.
Yeah, and I think the easiest way to do that is this questioning that we're doing with one another, this inquiry. My favorite quote of all time is Albert Einstein saying, I'm not particularly good at anything. I'm just profoundly curious. And if you could experience the world through that profound curiosity, if you could cultivate that profound curiosity in yourself, you're going to find yourself reaching across, which I think is beautiful. Let's all become profoundly curious, right? About the world we live in.
Right. Yeah. No, I definitely. If we, if everybody just wants to like live in their safe space and doesn't ever want to have an uncomfortable conversation, then how can you ever move forward? Everyone's just going to be stuck in their ways, and we'll continue to see the same divisiveness that we see in everyday life.
Yeah, I'm also a profound introvert, and so to be a profound introvert and try to cultivate profound curiosity about the world I live in, it's very uncomfortable. But I will continue to say that discomfort tells me.
That's crazy to hear that you're an introvert, because you are. I mean, when you walk into a room, the room lights up. Like there's not many people I've ever met that have the same energy and stuff that you do. So to hear you're an introvert is wild, because you're like the mayor when you walk into the Y.
I attribute that to my mom. She taught me how to shine brightly. Yeah. Because it's also a defense mechanism too.
Really?
Yeah. You cultivate that, like, I'm going to walk into a space, I'm going to take it over energetically. I'm going to make it feel safe so everyone knows exactly what I'm here for. But yeah, my mom's kind of a witchy woman. And so she would always say, imagine every time you feel uncomfortable, every time you feel unsafe, just let this white light pour into you. This white light just pours into you. And I tell you, that practice has served me in such a powerful way. I just told you about the Mandela Washington Fellows were here. Mm-hmm. They said, Jude, whenever you leave a room, you can feel it just
hands down.
Oh, that's interesting. But it is that practice that my mom taught me of filling myself with light, allowing myself to be filled with light, knowing that I deserve to be filled with light.
Right.
That gave me that ability.
Your mom did a good job.
She did a really good job. My sister would tell you otherwise, but my mom did a very good job.
Which sister?
You know the sister.
That sister?
That sister.
I mean, I've only ever heard her speak supremely high of your mom.
You get the two together? Yeah.
Is it like that?
Yeah. It can be. They love my mom so much, and they're very competitive when it comes to my mom.
That's what sisters. I heard.
Yeah. So
she kind of reverts back from what I heard to her younger self, and mom. Yeah. Tugging on her. Jude did this.
Yeah.
Can't believe she would do that.
I know.
All right. So I got fun questions for you. These are, people have heard some about you and your story, but they don't truly know who Jude is.
Okay.
So.
I don't think I know who truly Jude is, but.
One last question I wanted to ask you that I forgot about.
Yes, I will marry you.
No. Let's go.
Okay.
We can do it. I don't think your husband would be happy to hear that.
He would be very unhappy.
Yeah. It wasn't me. Men getting pregnant.
What?
Men getting pregnant.
What about men getting pregnant?
How do you feel about it?
I think I know what you're talking about now.
Aren't they doing that now?
Or
is that fake news?
You mean men who retained a biological part of their body that was there before they were a man?
No, I think there's that.
I think that's all. I think what he's talking about is the only real case of that happening. It's just original parts.
Weren't they taking parts from a biological woman and putting them into a biological male?
What
I could be wrong. No, I swear I saw that. I swear I saw that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or no. I'm sorry. It wasn't breastfeeding.
Men breastfeeding.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's what it was. I'm sorry.
That's interesting. That's so interesting. And how are they able to breastfeed? What happens chemically that they can or biologically that they can do it?
I imagine they're giving them stuff to raise their estrogen to the point where they grow boobs and then start lactating.
I mean, if that's what you want, if that's what you feel is your truth, I mean, I don't have an opinion about it because, I mean, it might be a little bit sexy. So,
There's your answer.
But then, okay.
yeah.
All right.
What are your thoughts on it?
It's just wild.
Yeah.
What a day we live in. What a time. Holy shit. I mean, if you would have told me when I was young that we would be doing all this, it's just wild. I mean, it's
Yeah.
again, like I stand behind if you're an adult and that's what you want to do and stuff like that. I mean, I have no idea what the reaction, like how that affects the child, if it's the same milk or anything like that. Again, this is coming from an uneducated standpoint. I'm just curious what he thinks about it. Hopefully none of the dumb questions I've asked today will get either you nor me in trouble.
Yeah.
All right. So that was my last serious question.
That was a serious question?
That was, yeah, it was serious.
Sorry.
I really wanted to know.
Oh, I'm going to go do some research after this.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just want you to throw out first thing that comes to mind whenever I say these keywords.
Okay.
Happiness.
Scott.
Ooh, good one. You just asked me to marry you. What do you?
I know.
Community.
The YMCA.
Good one. Good one. Spirituality.
Source.
Source.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
When a lot of people talk about God, or higher power, I call it source.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel source is spirituality it's a way of being. It's not even a way of thinking or acting to me. It's just a way of being and feeling source energy flow through me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Source. How long? When did you come up with that?
Several years ago, because
Really?
I was uncomfortable with the word God, and I needed a word that would help me root into my spiritual being.
Gotcha. I like it. United States of America. Jude's a big Trump guy, by the way.
United States of America. We can do this.
You said it like it was a question.
Yeah,
I
mean,
like it.
Yeah.
We can do this. All right. YMCA.
Life-saving.
I agree. Fitness.
More.
Need more?
I do. Yes.
Nature.
Everything.
Pick one. Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Really?
Mm-hmm. That's where I'm moving.
I know. What is your what's your guilty pleasure
My guilty pleasure.
that we could talk about on the podcast?
Uh-huh. Yeah, okay. I would have to... my guilty pleasure. Mario Kart.
Really?
Oh, my God.
Nintendo 64?
Switch. Nintendo Switch.
Okay.
Like, it's whenever I'm going off the rails, whenever I just can't even think about another thing from work, or whenever I just need... It's Mario Kart. And I'm really good at it.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at it myself.
Okay.
We went to El Paso to see my my wife's family, and I put a beat down on that whole family.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna.
From what I remember, that's what I remember. I could be wrong,
Yeah.
but
We'll see.
any other game, no. But
Yeah.
Mario Kart, I was
That's
pretty
it for me
decent
too.
at.
Mario Kart.
All right, and last but definitely not least, Andy.
Wow. Why'd you do that?
That was a good one, right?
Brother.
For anybody, I think you had talked about him a little bit
Yeah.
before, but when I had started coming into the Y and working with people, I quickly met Andy.
Uh-huh.
Andy has Down syndrome. He's in his 50s.
He's about to be 50.
He's about to
Next
be
month.
50.
Yeah.
And he is just, much like Jude, just one of the most electric, good energy. Like, you can't see Andy and not have a better day. And he is unapologetically Andy at all times.
All times.
But he's the official or unofficial director of Hugs of the
He's
Town
the
Lake YMCA.
executive director of Hugs.
Director of
Yeah.
Hugs.
And you know, the reason why I teared up is because I'm leaving Texas, and he and his mom and I have talked about what we're going to do and how we're going to make this work. And so, Andy has a sleepover at our house every single month.
Yeah.
So I told her, I said, for the first year, I'm going to come back every single month, and we're still going to do our sleepover. But this time it's at his house. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, he's my best friend. He's been my best friend for 19 years, and he's a brother to my siblings and I.
What's the origin story with Andy?
Origin story
with y'all.
To what?
With you guys.
Well, I mean, because it was the YMCA, right?
Right.
So he had been a member, and this is what I love about the YMCA so much. But his father got sick and died very quickly, and his mom needed to go back to work. And she called the YMCA and she said, I don't know what to do. Like, Andy, they had been members at the Y. And the executive director at the time at the Town Lake YMCA said, well, just bring him to the Y. So in 2003, Andy started coming to the Y every single day at 7:30 in the morning till 3 p.m. in the afternoon when his mom would pick him up after work. And so he and I worked the towel desk together. And, oh my God. Do I have time for a really funny story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So Andy was immediately very protective of me. And so there was this woman who would walk up to the towel desk, and we would have these big washers and dryers, and we'd bring out all these hot towels and put them on the counter, and we'd fold them. And this woman would always come up, and she'd be so mean, and she'd be like, where's the towels? Where's the towels? Or like, these towels aren't clean enough, or this towel has a hair on it, or whatever. And so, and she would just be very rude to me. Mm-hmm. And one day, she was walking up, and I was like, crap, there's no towels on the counter. We still have to put them up on the counter. And she walks up, slams her hand on the counter. She's like, where's the towels? And Andy just stops. And he stares at her. And he slowly turns. And he grabs towels off the shelf. And he turns all the way around, comes back around. He's like, here's your towel, bitch. And I shot to the ground. And I was so mortified, and I was just sitting on the ground, and he's just stone cold staring at her. And she must have walked away, because then he goes. And that was like when I knew that he was, on my side. And he's held every single one of the babies in our family at birth.
Really?
He's held them. It's just amazing. So you have to come to his 50th birthday party on October 27th.
Tell me.
Yep.
Shoot me the information. I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it.
Yeah.
I fucking love Andy.
I do too.
That's the perfect Andy story right there.
I know. I can't believe you made me cry though.
I mean, I hear I have a talent for it.
Do you really?
Evidently.
Nice.
I was explaining to people why I enjoy speaking so much, and I was talking about, when I started noticing, and I would get up on a stage, or I'd speak to a group of people, and through what I was saying, getting them to laugh or getting them to cry, and it just, I realized what a powerful thing is, like when you can provoke emotion out of people.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I was aware not everybody can do that, and so whenever I'd come home from a speaking thing, my wife would, how'd it go? And I'm like, got the one part, there was like 5 people crying, and then one day she's like, why do you love making people cry? And I was like, no, that's not the goal. But obviously, she knew she's messing with me. But obviously, whatever I was saying was hitting to a point where it provoked emotion out of people. Yeah,
you're helping people feel so that they can experience inspiration and aspiration, right?
So. And that, I'd say that's been one of my biggest lessons as a bastardized straight white male or whatever is getting in touch with, I'm kidding, but getting in touch with not always having to be a tough guy.
Yeah.
And getting in touch with, my feelings, and that's what's brought me here today. That's what's brought me to where I'm at with speaking and doing what I do for a living now is the fact that I'm willing to get up and be vulnerable and talk about the hard things, and that's what really connects with people, and that's what helps change what their views on things might be and stuff like that, is just being willing to do that.
And you know what we could celebrate about that is when you, Shawn Livingston, get up and share your vulnerability, you express vulnerability, you show vulnerability, you're making the world at large a better place, because you're dismantling all of these ideas of what a white, straight male is supposed to be. You don't have to be that all the time.
Right.
You're strong.
Yeah.
You're masculine, but you can feel things.
Right.
And you can be curious.
Yeah.
And that's powerful.
Definitely.
So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Just give me goosebumps. Jude, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time today. I love you. I wish you the best of luck on your new journey. Congratulations. I promise you the YMCA and Austin as a whole will miss you. You're a leader there. You're a leader in the community. Send a special hello and shout out to all my family members at the Town Lake YMCA.
Yes.
I love y'all, and you guys are family for life. Is there anything you wanna plug or talk about or anything before we go?
No, I just want to thank you for this experience, and I want to thank you for making me a better person. You truly do. I am grateful.
Thank you.
Yep.
Me too. So the way we like to wrap up the podcast is it's called the I Am Redemption Podcast.
Yep.
And so everybody kind of knows your story and a little bit about you, but they don't truly know who you are. So if you would be so kind, if you'd take a look in your camera and let them know who Jude is.
I am on a journey.